very big. There's also some other considerations. There's, of course, the capacity. You need a lot of professionals in one dedicated team to decide what you're going to do and do all these. So there's like 6 months of very intense work. If you decided to issue bonds abroad, you needed to select the lead managers, hiring lawyers, prepare all these documents, deciding where you're listing, and hire financial advisors, obtain credit ratings, also engage in intensive discussion with the market investors. So all these need good professionals to manage the process. If the process is managed well, the funding cost will be low. You will establish good reputation with the broad capital markets. If the process was not well managed, for example, you didn't raise enough money as you expected, you will get a very bad reputation in the markets. People say, oh, this guy is not well perceived by the international investor. Maybe we should not participate next time because after the issue, maybe the yield is going to increase. Investor will suffer loss. So it's very important to make sure the process is managed successfully because it will have very long-lasting impact on your ability to assess global markets on what terms. So these are, in order to establish long-term relations with certain anchor investors, some key mutual funds, they have dedicated mandates to buy high-yield emerging markets bonds. These you need to be, build up long-term good relationships. Next, I'm going to talk about roughly the timelines and the major milestones for issuing Euro bonds. Usually, it takes about 5 or 6 months for the first-time issues. You start with hiring a lead manager. In the first week, then you engage with them to prepare other legal documents. Your early stage, you also needed to obtain a rating with all these 3 major rating agencies. Then you also needed to do a lot of marketing presentations, like all these PowerPoints. You are ready to talk to different investors around the world. Usually you have to market in London, New York, or Boston, all these major centers where all these mutual funds are based. So then in the execution, usually it takes like 1 or 2 weeks. After you announce the deal, you have to go to the road shows. You're like the major people from the PDMO and the Ministry of Finance have to go with the leader managers to travel and make all these presentations and are ready to answer the questions to other investors. After that, you will be able to get some pricing indication from other investors. Then you decide how much you want to issue, what are the terms, then what are the acceptable interest you're going to pay. Then you finish the deal, you have to do a lot of press communications, you have to review all the operations. So this whole process is very intense. It takes 5 or 6 months. So during this process, you probably need a dedicated team, at least 5 or 6 people to handle all these document preparations, engage all the external counterparties, and usually you need people with good experience in your teams. First step is usually needed to establish a dedicated team with 5 or 6 people. Each people will be assigned a major responsibility, including like some are maybe engaged in more legals, some are engaged with some rating agency issues, some more engaged with the investment banks, some are more interested in the pricings and decide what kind of bond structure is preferred. So some are more engaged in investment relations. They prepare all these macro policy information about your countries, try to communicate all these to the potential investor and prepare the documentations. Typically, investor also requires like MTDS documents, the DSAs, all these, and also projections of fiscal and macro conditions. So these requires a professional team, dedicated team. They will be started 6 months ago. Everybody will be start prepared to do all this work. So first, set up a dedicated team. After you have the dedicated team, then you first select leader managers. Leader managers is basically all these investment banks. There's a few investment banks, they specialize in bond issuance from small countries, from developed